Hi, just waiting for some people to hop on. This is going to be a part of the little mini series called Theory Room, where we talk about true crime theories, conspiracy theories, deep dives. The first live stream we did Reddit. This one again, I have conspiracy theories from Reddit. And we'll go further in like TikTok deep dives, any conspiracy theories any of you may have, stuff like that. But before I hop in, I just want to give a little disclaimer that before I get started, all of these theories are not my own. They are from Reddit, so I don't claim them to be my own. And I will always give credit where credit is due. So any of these statements I make, I'm sure to include the handles of everyone who makes these posts. And if any of these conspiracy theories are my own, I let everybody who's watching know so that there's a distinct knowledge of what's mine, what I took from Reddit, what I took from TikTok, what I took from any of you guys. So I just wanted to make that little disclaimer before I hopped right in. So the first one, all of these for this live stream episode are going to be from Reddit this time, as well as the last time. So if you want to take a look at that, that will also be in this little mini series as well. Same playlists, you can check that out. I had a lot of great interaction on that one, so that was super awesome to see. So let's hop in. A common name that we will see throughout the Reddit conspiracy theories is a handle called Reddit, and it's going to be in parentheses. So I did see so many of their conspiracy theories that are pretty on top of it in terms of conspiracy theories. So I just kind of added on my own thoughts or any research that I thought was important to their little theories. So I did want to start with one of theirs. So the handle is called Deleted. And they say that, quote, truckers account for more missing and murdered than we realize. This one I thought was interesting because there have been tons of true crime cases where truckers or even just people at truck stops at night have gone missing or have been murdered. So I thought that definitely pertained to that conspiracy theory. But this also goes the other way too. There have been a lot of cases where truck drivers become the perpetrators because they travel so often. So it's a little easier for them to flee from place to place. So that can kind of go both ways, but I do see the conspiracy behind that. I definitely thought it was interesting. Another one from Deleted is that they thought, quote, Texarkana Moonlight Murderer and Zodiac Killer are the same person. Texarkana Killer was said to be late teens, early 20s at the time of the murders. Zodiac was told to be late 30s, early 40s. The ages at the times of the murders would line up. Both the Zodiac and Texarkana Killer used multiple caliber guns. Both wore a hood. Both used a flashlight to blind victims at least once. Both used lovers' lanes mainly, but had a change of location at least once. Both crimes had a victim shot through the jaw who survived. Texarkana had sexual assaults. However, that factor in crime could have changed with age. Gap in crimes could have been due to military service / prison or committing crimes while moving across from Texas to California. I think the similarities between the two are very eerie. I think that it's also plausible because the theory they suggested between the timeline would definitely add up as well if they had correlation to each other. So I think that this is plausible. After reading this, I always wondered if police had looked into this because I understand that it's technically out of each other's jurisdictions. So I'm curious to know that if Texas investigators and California investigators were to team up, if they could tie in their evidence and possibly come up with a suspect if the two have a connection. So I was definitely interested with that one because I've never heard that theory connecting the two before. But there was a huge chain where people were talking about that. So there was a lot of conspiracy theories, evidence that would correlate the two. So that was definitely interesting to read. I do want to read more up on that one. And there's actually somebody under that chain who I wanted to add their conspiracy theory as well because it did relate to it. I thought, again, this was super cool to learn about because I've never really kind of correlated the two together. And I'm not the most familiar on the Texarkana killer. However, most people know about the Zodiac killer. So I thought that was super cool. But Love's Cat 666 also had practically the same theory about the Zodiac killer, and Texarkana saying, I have a theory about the Zodiac killer. Please, anybody let me know your thoughts on this as well. I have a hunch telling me that Zodiac is somehow connected to the Texarkana murders that took place in the late 1940s. All victims were couples in Lover's Lane, gunned down by a young man wearing a burlap sack with holes cut out for eyes. Zodiac started up in the late 1960s, same type of victims, use of a gun, and while wearing a black sack with the same kind of eye holes. With those years in between, I believe that it may have been a young, possibly teenage Zodiac living in or around Texarkana. When the heat of those murders got a little too hot, he took a break, developed his codes, protected his art for lack of better terms. Maybe this was a young Zodiac learning not to shit where he ate. Got a little older, popped up on the West Coast and finished what he started in Texarkana. So again, these are super similar conspiracy theories. I thought they were pretty cool that they correlated with one another. And again, I know a little bit about the Zodiac killer. I feel like I know basic information on that. However, I've never really heard of Texarkana. So after seeing everybody's chains underneath that and talking about it, I definitely want to research more into it. So I just thought that was super cool. And these two Reddit posters aren't the only ones that believe this theory. There's a chain of comments under each post, so many similarities and other conspiracies that the two coincide with each other that I think we could do an entire deep dive on this theory alone if we just went back and looked at all of the chains that was underneath these conspiracy or like this specific conspiracy theory. So I think that would be cool for sure to do. Miss D. Reed says, I think John Bonet was killed by an intruder, but the parents thought their son did it, so they wrote the ransom note, which on the last live stream we did talk about John Bonet, and I kind of wanted to include this one because it's super different from the ones that we had kind of discussed originally. So originally we talked about it was possibly her parents, or her parents had covered it up, or it was her brother and her parents found out and they were trying to protect their brother, which in family cases like this, we do sometimes see that a sibling had done it or somebody else in the family had done it and the rest of the family kind of covers it up because for many reasons, sometimes they don't want to lose another family member when they've already now lost one and they're in the grieving process. Or sometimes they just don't want to believe it because it's so crazy and out there to think about. So I just thought that this theory kind of went in the complete opposite direction of what this case usually goes in. Again, I know we talked about John Bonet in our last theory room live, but this theory was very different from any take I've heard before, so I wanted to include this one. I thought it was interesting because it goes against what most conspiracy theorists think. And in terms of conspiracy theories that I brought to the table, this was one I definitely wanted to talk about. So Mouth of Trombone thinks, quote, Ellen Greenberg was having hallucinations and impulsive thoughts brought on by a combination of stress and adverse reaction to medication. Maybe she was hallucinating bugs on her neck or something. She may not have been trying to kill herself, but was acting irrationally and self-harming or stabbing at invisible attackers. The autopsy issue with the major nerve in her neck is very subjective and could be wrong. So this one I thought was cool to include in the live because I just recently covered the case of Ellen Greenberg not too long ago. So if you want some background on this case, you can listen to that on Spotify or right here on YouTube. Eventually, I will start uploading onto Apple Podcasts as well. A lot of people have been asking to see these podcast episodes on Apple Podcasts, so I am definitely going to integrate onto there as well soon. But I just thought this was a super interesting theory. However, I'm not sure how plausible I think it is because some did originally think that maybe her death was a result of self-harm. But that was kind of shaken off or disproven because she had been stabbed in her back. And that's pretty impossible to inflict a wound in your back upon yourself. But still super interesting to read about. Last time, some of you guys had some theories for me. So I do want to open the comments to see if any of you guys have any conspiracy theories for me or any input on the ones that I've gone over. I know the Zodiac Killer, again, is a pretty well-known one. So I figured some of you guys may have some interesting thoughts on that one. If there's any more that you want me to reiterate or go over with you guys, I can definitely do that for you. But I was just curious to know if any of you guys had any thoughts or comments on any of them down below, and I can actually pull up some more for you guys as well so that we can talk about. I know the JonBenet one would also probably be a pretty big hit with you guys because you guys seemed to love that one last time as well. So, and I actually just posted on TikTok that there has been new DNA testing on the Jack the Ripper case. And so if you guys want to go over there and check out that video, there's some information on that for you. But I did see a few Jack the Ripper conspiracy theories. One being that Jack the Ripper left England and changed his name to H.H. Holmes. However, not many people agreed with this one. I just thought it was interesting to include. Let's see if I can pull up any more for you guys. I try not to dive too deep into the ones that I don't know much about because I like to give you guys some background information as well. So, I kind of don't want to just throw out information for you guys that I'm not 100% certain on. This one is from Extreme Rhubarb 4677. And they say, I think the Axemen of New Orleans were two people. One who committed the murders in 1918 and a copycat in 1919. I don't think I'm crazy for thinking this. And they got a response asking if they had any suspects in mind, and they said, I think Joseph Mumfree could have done the 1919 murders. So that one was definitely interesting to hear about. There's a lot from like younger kids that I don't necessarily know information on. So again, I don't want to give you guys information that I don't know too much about and mislead you guys in any way. One we did talk about last time was about Tiger King. I was wondering if anybody's gotten a chance to watch Tiger King since then. I still haven't watched it. I haven't had the chance. I'm not a big sit-down TV watcher unless I'm watching a documentary or something when I'm researching for new episodes for you guys, but usually I'm not big on just sitting down and watching TV. So I still have to look into that one. If you guys want me to research that and do an episode on that I can definitely do for you guys. In about 15 minutes, this week's episode will be live on Spotify and YouTube. It's on actually a conspiracy theory that we talked about 2 weeks ago again. It was the Kathleen and Michael Peterson case. So that case, I don't want to give you too much information. I'd rather you guys go listen to the episode, but it was said that Michael Peterson had murdered his wife, Kathleen. However, there was evidence supporting the fact that it could have possibly been an owl that had done it. So I do talk about that theory in this week's episode. So super fun to research because it was one of those cases where it's something that you don't really hear of in true crime. It was very different, lots of twists and turns in it. So definitely a good episode to listen to if you're just getting into the channel. And if you are, hi, welcome. I'm Emily. I'm your host. I post every Tuesday unless there's any issues. If there's ever any issues, I always let you guys know. I am still pretty new to this, so I'm learning with you guys, which is, I feel like amplifies the experience a little bit because I get to research and upload every week, so we're kind of learning things at a similar time frame. Some things I've read or listened to say that either the Zodiac is in jail for another crime or that he/she died, which is why they disappeared. So that kind of goes, coincides with some of the theories that I was reading before to you guys. I definitely think that's a possibility. And that's also kind of why the two theorists think that there was a gap in the murders originally. So I think that's definitely a possibility that they either passed away or that they are in jail for a completely different crime, because usually if people get away with one crime, they think they can get away with multiple. So they could have been not only a serial killer, but a serial perpetrator doing many illegal things. I'm excited for the Peterson episode. That should be out in 10 minutes. It's not a long episode, but it was super fun to research, for sure. I like the true crime cases that are a little bit different. Keeps things a little bit interesting for you guys, so I'm not reiterating the same things, but also makes it a little bit more interesting for me to research. So there's a lot of docuseries on the case. So I watched a few docuseries on Hulu, Netflix, YouTube. There's a lot of information online because it did take so many people by surprise, just because, again, it was so different. So I think that was definitely a cool one to research. I think also because not everyone knows what really happened. Not everybody is 100% sure on what they think went down. So I think that keeps other people on their toes too. What's your favorite episode so far and why? Ooh, that's tough. Just because I love true crime in general. All of the episodes have been super fun to research. I do seem to notice that you guys like the missing cases or the unsolved cases a lot, and I think that's interesting too because there's so many theories behind them, and I think the unsolved or non-closed, whatever you want to call it, I think those cases are super cool to learn about because there are so many theories. I feel like they're kind of not open for interpretation because obviously something happened. We just don't know exactly what. But I think that those cases are super cool to research. I like doing cases that not many people know about as well because it's fun to see people message me and getting similar reactions to what I had when I did research as well. So not just doing, I do enjoy doing the ones that people are pretty common with. I think those are always fun, but I think I definitely enjoy more smaller town, less known ones because those seem to be the ones that also really interest you, and I feel like I can get a little bit more into them and not just spew out facts that you guys already know. So I think those ones are really awesome to do. Does anybody have any of their own conspiracies or adding on to any of the conspiracies that I read to you guys from Reddit, or any comments on any episodes that you guys have liked or disliked? A little input. A lot of these are saying the same thing we talked about last week, that they think that the person who killed JonBenet Ramsey was either her parents or her brother. We did talk about that a lot last time. This is one that I don't know much about, so I'm just going to read it to you guys. Unfortunately, I don't have much background information for you, but maybe this will be a case that I cover sometime down the road. But I was there for Disco says, the Robert Wone case is horrible and fascinating. My theory is Robert was not getting along with his wife and started to experiment with his lifelong friend. Something happened during the sex play, and the three men living together had to cover it up. The state of Robert's body in bed after being stabbed to death was too clean, and the other intimate detail about where they found some of Robert's sperm cells make no sense if it was an intruder. I don't know much on that one. If you guys know anything on that one, feel free to comment. I would love to learn about it a little bit more. It's definitely one I haven't heard of before, so I'm wondering if this is one of the ones that's not the most well known. Going back to JonBenet, it's way too calm for my liking. Troubles logging in. I'm wondering if that's because I switched over to my phone as opposed to my computer, but it seems to be a very similar setup, so hopefully all is well. Glad to see everybody here. But again, with the JonBenet one, a lot of people do find it a little bit eerie that things are kind of calm on her parents' side, which I see. We do see that in a lot of true crime cases, though, once things are starting to kind of slow down. We saw that in the Summer Wells case. We saw that in the D.R. Coons case, which I have covered both of those. You guys seem to really enjoy those ones a lot. So those were from a few weeks ago. You can still check those out. Those are on my page, also on Spotify. But once things start to peter out, there's definitely a lot less intensity surrounding the case. So that does tend to happen sometimes. So I feel like that's hard to determine if they necessarily have something to do with it or not. I would definitely like to know the psychology behind that, but I am not entirely sure. Let's see. I know Casey Anthony is a pretty common name in true crime nowadays. there's so many threads about Casey Anthony on Casey Anthony chat, actually. The description is a subreddit for discussion of Casey Anthony, who became famous when her daughter was reported missing and later found dead. Casey was indicted for first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to police, but was found not guilty on the first 3 charges. Many people feel justice was not served in the case. I don't know if any of you guys have any thoughts or conspiracies about Casey Anthony, but there is so many people have thoughts and conspiracies on that case as well. So I think that's definitely one I'd like to cover somewhere down the line, if that's something you guys would be interested in. A theory I heard with Benet that she was actually kidnapped, but the kidnappers, scared from how quickly it blew up, they panicked and killed her. I haven't heard that theory before, but I can see how that would make sense. I feel like there's just so many inconspicuities with that case, so I can see how that could definitely be a theory. I feel like there's so many gaps in the evidence that we do have and so many misconceptions with what we do have, so I lived about 2 blocks from Anthony, he said. That's an interesting one. I feel like the Casey Anthony one is still pretty new, so there are a lot of talks about that still. I feel like any case that's widespread like that is going to be talked about for quite some time, especially when there's no new evidence, no new breakthroughs in cases like that. So there's a lot of kind of stagnant in the case. But things escalated so quickly. He said the whole neighborhood thought she sold her. So people believe that Casey Anthony sold her daughter. Is that what you're saying? Because I personally haven't heard that theory before. I feel like that's definitely an interesting one to kind of, the whole neighborhood. Okay. I haven't heard that one before. I would love to know like more information about that. I think that's really cool. I feel like there was just so much surrounding that case, and I feel like it's not the last we will hear about this case. Fraternity. So their tag is called and I turned around. They said, I read that Casey's brother was tested for paternity for her daughter. He was not a match. I assume from that there's a DNA profile of Kaylee on file. Would that be something a person could request and pay for? I'm wondering if one willing to put in the hours could figure out who dad is by looking through family trees put together with people that have their DNA submitted to DNA companies. Edit to add, like the Gold State Killer was found. That's super interesting. That was the local rumor. Okay, that's super interesting. The fact that her brother was possibly tested to see if he was the father is something I've also never heard of. I just read that off of Reddit. Again, for this live stream, I only did Reddit theories. Eventually, I do want to dive into TikTok. There's a lot of conspiracy theories on TikTok. There's a lot of conspiracy theories on YouTube. Just kind of just get conspiracy theories overall. But I think that's all I have for today's live. If you guys have any more comments, feel free to drop them down below. This week's case should be out by now. Again, it's the Kathleen Peterson case that happened in 2001. So definitely an interesting one. Something that isn't typical to true crime cases. It was super fun to research. And thank you guys for joining me. It's always really nice to see you, and you guys are the reason that I'm able to do this every week. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm hoping to do a few more live streams this week. So same time, I'll always post to let you guys know that I'm gonna do a live, but I think that's it for this week. So I'm gonna hop off, but thank you guys for joining me. Have a good night, and I will see you tomorrow with a different little mini series for live streams. So that's it. Thank you guys. Bye.